You have to use your network and ask about Mexico. And of course, you can work here. I mean, we have a Venezuelans, Colombians, Peruvians, and I have one, I think he's Hungarian, who speaks Russian and so many languages, which are important nowadays.
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
Successful EP operations and collaborations in Mexico. Today, Elijah Shaw and myself, we're very pleased to be speaking with Hector Robles Conde, the President LATAM and VP Global Operations at FirstCall, and a great friend of this podcast and, of course, the Circuit Magazine. Mexico, why is it an enduring topic that every protector at some stage is going to want to think about, Elijah? What do you think?
Well, I know we've had a couple subject matter experts that operate in and around that area on the show, but I think someone like Hector brings a perspective because that's the environment he lives in. And then to your question, whenever you hear something about Latin America, besides a couple other big name countries, which I'm sure we'll get into, Mexico inevitably comes up. And I think probably because of its proximity to the United States, the rich history they have, but also the challenges that they've had kind of, push that front and center. So I know when operators think about high risk environments, and whether that's the cartel or have you, inevitably Mexico comes up. And so I'd be interested in just hearing Hector's perspective on it and, what his take on the situation is.
Because we can put to him, are the concerns from the popular press right? Are people's preconceived ideas about what they need right? And if they're not quite right, as I think we might find, how can we temper that enthusiasm, shall we say? Because if you were to take a client and they said, right, I want all of this and this massive protection and this very visible protection, I mean, I think even without consulting Mexican colleagues, you probably say, well, maybe a different approach.
Sure. Well, for one, you say all you know is all you know, which is again another case for having someone who operates in that environment at a high level. And then the other piece to that is of course perception is clouded by whatever agenda. So even now, me from United States and you from the United Kingdom, we have our own preconceived notions and maybe even prejudices. And so it takes someone who's embedded in a particular environment, whether that's Mexico or Palestine or Moscow, that can kind of offer an alternative perspective, and then one that you can look at and go, okay, I see where you're coming from.
Good idea, yeah, because that's something we should all reflect on, and that's the beauty of doing these sector or geographic specific segments, whether it's the Swiss operations we did not so long ago, or Japan during the Olympics. I think this gives us a good time to reflect, but also make new friends, because Hector is willing to reach out and say hello. I did meet Hector at the IPSB in Vegas with a fantastic panel that he was on with other Mexican, Latin America operators. Which is great. So let's then just jump into it. Let's meet Hector. Let's uncover successful EP operations and partnerships in Mexico.
Nice.
And now, let's meet one of the contributors to the Circuit Magazine.
Effective operations in Mexico. Today, we are delighted to be joined by Hector Robles, President, FirstCall Latin America and VP Global Operations. It's a great pleasure to have you on. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Helen. I appreciate the gesture of inviting me to your podcast. I listen to it very often, so I'm honored. Thank you very much. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone.
Well, thank you very much. And it's been great to have your contributions as well. And of course, we met at the IPSB just the other week in Vegas. Lots and lots of topics that we can discuss, but operating in Mexico, why are we talking about it? Obviously, I know and you know, but for our listeners, let's paint the picture. What's the problem you think we can attempt to solve when looking at partnering and operating in Mexico?
Well, there are two things. It's like this relation with the devil. You can't get rid of it sometimes. And we are too close to the US. So if I give you a very quick number, probably the fourth largest economy in the world is divided by two countries. And it's all these southern border for the US and the northern border for us in Mexico. All that border generates that amount of revenues, of income, the economy that they have there. So and it goes down south in a like cascade, in a waterfall. You have different spots in Mexico where a lot of companies are investing, and on top of that, you also have tourism. With I wouldn't say the end of the pandemic, but I would say that with countries opening up, we've seen an increase of tourism from different places, countries all over the world. And as I said before, I mean, people choosing very remote areas that complicate things, and obviously those people that choose those very remote areas are high net worth individuals. So they want everything as if they were living in New York or in London. So it complicates things because they still want to. I said they think because they pay for it, then we can get it. And sometimes resources are limited in every country, but especially in Mexico, when you go to remote areas. But I would say that is one thing that makes Mexico very attractive for business, pleasure. And now you have nomads. I've seen a lot of people renting apartments in Mexico City, just working, online, and enjoying life. So that complicates things a bit. I mean, not all of them are expats, which have expats or high net worth individuals, or or people who work for Fortune 500 companies that really have the economic resources to pay for security, for executive protection. It's a luxury. It is really not a commodities market. It's a luxury. I don't know if I would be able to pay for it if I had the money, if I would be willing to pay it from my own wallet, because it's very expensive.
You're very expensive, but rather appealing, and I like that picture you paint, because it's not just the ultra high net worth. It's nomads. And I see a great quality of life that attracts a lot of people. But then stepping back a little bit, what about yourself? Where does your passion for protection come from?
Well, my passion for protection started not long ago, seven years ago. As a matter of fact, I've been in the industry for the security industry for around 20 years now, since 1999, a bit more than 20 years. But I worked in the security sector, but in telecommunications, interoperability communications, software for intelligence and open sources, cybersecurity. It was all about physical security and software. I worked for 3 Israeli companies in the past, and one of those was very focused on intelligence, to provide software for NSA type of or intelligence centers, especially government, who are like the real ones that are allowed to buy those softwares, even though things happen that we don't like. Physical security for critical infrastructure. But then I've always been in sales and business development. I'm not an operational person. I've been in services where I see how things happen to understand. I've been always a person that needs to understand and has to understand how things operate or are executed, so I can talk to my clients, make them understand what are the needs. And because I work for government, and sometimes in government you have the technicians, and then you have the executives, and the same thing happens in the private industry. So sometimes we have to explain that a lot more. And when I was hired by FirstCall, but at that time the company was the name of the company was Steel International or Steel Foundation. Many people still call us Steel. And that company, this company has a legacy of executive protection, probably the first ones to actually protect a president. We were paid by the State Department to protect Jean-Bertrand Aristide back in the days when the coup against Jean-Claude Duvalier, I think was in the 90s or something like that. And then we moved to the Middle East. And then from there, we came to Latin America. When things got rough in the Middle East, we worked with the Blackwaters and all those companies. But then, as I understood the story of the history of the company, and I saw how things had to be, perfectly executed, planned. There's always a protocol. There's always a lot of experience that you need to that you need to know before you make things happen. People need to be trained a lot, and they go to different areas. It is really sometimes like Hollywood, like what they paint in the movies. But I will elaborate a little bit more on that. But it is sometimes like that, not as exaggerated. But this is wow, this is interesting. And then I got that's when I got my passion. When I started working for this company, I was a user of myself of executive protection, because I worked for GE and Johnson & Johnson and Airbus. Well, back in the day was European Aeronautics, Defense and Space. So I had to travel to many places, and I was a user in Venezuela, in Dominican Republic, in Guatemala, in Colombia, mainly in those places. But I never thought about all the resources that are needed, and that's when I understood this. I said, this is a great industry, and it's and the thing that amazed me the most was that a huge percentage of these companies are owned by families. Very few are international or like the size of the Securitas or the Allied Universals, and are listed in the stock market. It's a lot of solo practitioners, a lot of small companies, but they make a huge difference. It is a small and mid-sized enterprises industry.
And you need a lot of resources. I like that because that plays into a lot of your strengths. You've been on the other side. That's brilliant. You've been in sales, and a lot of people who start up the micro businesses often forget that need to constantly sell yourself, sell your service, always prospecting. But actually, in terms of, and we'll see how that applies to specifically Mexico soon. But what should the completely uninitiated operator better know? That the operator who's never really thought about operating in Mexico, never seen a Mexican job come up. But let's face it, in the industry, you could be in Vienna one day and Botswana the next. So what's the uninitiated better understand about operating in Mexico?
Well, first of all, Mexico is a place where you have a lot of factories. So the type of executives that visit Mexico is a lot different. You don't have the CEO going all over the place. Mainly, the companies we served in Mexico are based in London or in Germany or in France or in the UK or in China. Italy, some that like this, the G7 countries, let's say that. So resources are very limited because you have visitors, that you have expats, and it's different than in like in the US or UK, where you work at the like the real global headquarters and you see the muscle of the company. Over here in Mexico, it is different to start with in that regard. And that's what I could tell a person, that they need also to not everyone in Mexico is like in other countries law enforcement, that have a law enforcement background or a special forces background. We don't do that a lot because and I'm going to touch these things that people sometimes don't like to touch, but because of corruption things, we don't hire law enforcement or former military until a certain period of time has passed, like 10 years, because of that, because we don't know who they dealt with, what kind of relations they had. Even if you have a background investigation, You don't know. Sometimes it's dodgy, so we don't do that. But we hire a lot of solo practitioners that they don't have that background, but they have been trained. They've worked for the U.S. Embassy, or they worked for the Japanese Embassy, or they were the only ones that we hired is the Mexican Secret Service, Estado Mayor Presidencial, who are the ones that really, those 3,000 people that work for the presidential security. And when they leave that service, those are the ones that we because we think that those are like the ones that the cleanest background. But regularly, it's people that have been trained on their own or by other companies, or they have a relative, and then we start training them in driving, in surveillance, counter surveillance, even the law. They need to understand what the law is, because sometimes you have the police stopping you, and they want to know if you are one of the good guys or the bad guys, because sometimes you don't know. It is easy to recognize the bad guys because the type of cars they use or vehicles they use, but that's what they need to understand, that that do not disqualify a person because they don't have a law enforcement background or a military or special forces like in other countries. Over here, people really study and work hard to become an EP agent, because they don't have that, even though they have that mindset in their head, because they like the industry. For whatever reason, which could be because they watch the film, or because they have a relative, or because of their parent, their dad was a military, or was actually an EP agent. Sometimes it goes like that. But that's what I would tell them, that that's what they're going to find here. They're going to find a lot of resources. They'll be surprised of the resources you can find, but also I would say that do not expect things to be cheap just because it's Mexico, because there are things that are more expensive than in the US, and there are things in the US that are more expensive than in Mexico, or in any other country. I would just mention the US because, or the audience, but even in the UK as well. And that's something that people think, and it's good to have relations in Mexico to understand the industry. I would say that they should contact ASIS, IFPO as well, and any Mexican chamber of private industry. The security industry. There are two: the council, Security Council, and the Association of Private Security Enterprises in Mexico. So I would contact those.
I can see that they would be a useful starting point. But maybe an elephant in the room, if you're an international operator, I suppose, one, are you going to have to speak really good Spanish? And two, are job opportunities actually open to you in Mexico if you're not Mexican?
Well, it's always difficult. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but just like anybody else, it's 1 in a million. Yes, you have to speak the language, but also you need to understand the culture. When I say the culture, it's not just understanding the tacos and mariachis, the music and the food. There are a lot of things, very subtle things that you need to understand in every region of Mexico. There are a lot of Mexicos. You have the Mexico, those who like the beach and the sun and the sand and everything. Then you have the corporate Mexico, which I would say is somehow sophisticated in cities like Guadalajara, Mexico City, Monterrey. It's very sophisticated. But then you have the industrial Mexico, like in the center of Mexico, where you have all those manufacturing plants building cars or electronic appliances, different things. And then you have the border. So the culture is different in every place that you go. And obviously, a lot of people think about the cartels when they come to Mexico. Well, and my question is, what about the cartels? They're not going to focus. They're, as I said, they're not going to focus on you if you visit that place, or they're not going to kidnap you at all. I mean, if they have extortion, those type of crimes, they're probably extorting the company, not you, and they're not going to kidnap you unless you represent a threat. But I would say that if you are traveling to a country and you already think that you're going to be kidnapped, why do you think that? Does anybody know your agenda? Has your agenda been shared before? So when I say, well, probably the problem is not traveling to a high risk area. Probably the problem is that somebody's leaking information from inside your company. So you have to check both. But as I said, you have to understand the culture and the little things and the things that you don't do just because you were special forces, just because you were law enforcement. Some things do not apply. Sometimes protocols, we follow them and we explain the client, we explain the security managers why sometimes using a minivan is much better than a suburban vehicle, which is very large, and because you need to be discreet, you need to flow, make it very smooth, and I would say I wouldn't say secret. You're going to be secretly transported to one place from that place to another, but that's the way it goes. And sometimes you have to. Sometimes you're not going to use armored vehicles. Sometimes it's difficult to have armored vehicles in some areas in Mexico, and actually you're going to recognize who you are just because of the type of vehicle you have. And then you need this operator who has boots on the ground, who knows people, who has a very good network, and they can help you execute the service. And sometimes those companies have operation centers. They send you intelligence reports. I wouldn't say they would compete with Stratford, or they would compete with international SOS. If I talking,
Yeah.
I'll just say a few names. But they give you the real thing in real time, what is happening there, because they know people and they know for sure that what they're telling you is what is happening. And as I said, having local partners is important.
So that's really what we're talking about. It's a much, much more likely scenario that you're going to have an operation and need a local partner. It's much less likely that you're sitting in Paris and one day you say, do you know what? I'm going to move to Mexico and get an EP job, which I think is kind of true of a lot of geographies. It's not every day someone would up sticks. Now, of course, you will have seen we had Lee Orton on the podcast last year, and Lee has a unique experience. But then I suppose on the subject of partnerships, how can international operators make an informed choice? What should they sort of look for in partnerships? Should they look for local content? Should they look for a better type of contract? I don't know. I'm sort of painting a picture as we go, but what should they do?
Well, as I said before, I would start by contacting ACES and IFPO. You have people that belong to both associations or institutions, to ask for somebody for sure has been to Mexico, has operated here, and then by that you start digging, or type Mexican companies, private security Mexican companies, and then from there. But it's always better if it's a referral, if somebody recommends this company or the other. So you have to use your network, whatever you are, in whatever country you are, and ask about Mexico. And of course you can work here. We have Venezuelans, Colombians, Peruvians, and I have one, I think he's Hungarian, who speaks Russian and so many languages which are important nowadays. Vitali, who's a very good guy. But I would say, and he made his trip to Mexico and even Ivan Ivanovich as well, by networking and asking which are the right companies, what are the right associations, and then start making phone calls, contact people through LinkedIn, or have a conversation, have somebody introduce you to another company, and that's what we do very often. It's at least, even if we do a lot of work on sales and promote the company, I can tell you 90% of the jobs we have is a referral. It's a referral. It's good for top of mind. It's good for marketing. It's good to be to be out there and people see that you're still alive. But it's recommendation, and when companies feel comfortable with the way you execute services, and then they give you a good recommendation, and like that, because we are all in the same, as you say, we're all in the same industry, and every time somebody knows someone. So that's the way I would start. And then, as I said, contact the Mexican Association of Private Security Companies, contact the council, the Mexican Council of Private Security, and they would give you a lot of information that they would recommend. And a lot of people contact their Chamber of Commerce. Over here in Mexico, we have the American Chamber of Commerce, the German Chamber of Commerce. You have the British Council. So you have to use those institutions, and then you get a lot more information. But as I said, we all know someone.
And that is kind of good, because if not on that occasion, what else would one need the Chamber of Commerce in Mexico for? Unless you were to actually use them. So perhaps it's a use them or lose them scenario. I guess going to Mexico specifically, we've already talked a little bit about maybe where you need to be more discreet. How can we as internationals or you as local specialists manage expectations, let's say, of a large enterprise when they say, I'm coming to Mexico and I will have a B7 Oshkosh armored vehicle or something crazy, right? How can we get that, manage those expectations?
Well, it's always difficult to make them sometimes understand the resources that we have here, and also the convenience of having such type of vehicles or tools that are going to be needed. You have to speak with truth. Tell them why you think and why you've done it, how you've done it before, and why it worked. Sometimes clients are very stubborn and they want what they want, but you have to be honest and you have to tell them, we're going to do it. We just think that it would be better if we do it this way because roads are this way and that way. The car is going to be too heavy. It's going to be those roads. You don't go to, and it really depends on the industry you work for. Financial industry, it's always going to be urban areas. But if you have manufacturing and you have mining and you have energy, you're going to have to go to remote areas. So you armored vehicles in those areas. I don't know. We just had the visit of President Biden yesterday and Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and with the beast, with the vehicle, there are a lot of problems whenever they transport that. That sometimes it gets it's difficult to drive that car anywhere in the world. But coming back to Mexico, that is what we do. We always tell them what is the best and what is our recommendation. If they don't like it, we still tell them why it isn't convenient and it's not about price. It's not about cost. It's not about money. It's about being discreet. It's about having the right car, the right vehicle for that person. Sometimes I want this special brand of car, and sometimes we don't even have that brand of car in Mexico, or that is very common with in the automotive industry. They always want to use their vehicles. If Ford or Mercedes or BMW, they want you to transport their executives in those type of cars. And sometimes you don't have armored vehicles in those type of cars. It's uncommon. So you have to make them understand, and it's a bit difficult for them to accept the fact that is not the right or the correct way of doing things here in Mexico. But I would say that normally we follow protocol in a large percentage. We just make few adjustments in their trips. But I say it's always be honest from the beginning, and if you don't agree with something, just say it. Just say why, and you explain with examples, with your experience what happened. Sometimes they're going to give you their experience as well, and sometimes they're going to tell you, well, I don't know. There's nothing I can do. This is the type. This protocol indicates that the CEO has to use this type of vehicle, and we have to follow protocol strictly. And that's when you say, well, okay. So once you know what you must do, you do what you can do. And then once you know that you have to follow protocol strictly, then you have to adapt things around it. around. So probably you need another layer. Maybe you need one layer less of people. Maybe you need a driver that speaks. You don't need a driver that speaks English. You only need an EP agent with the CEO or with executive, and the type of things that you do when you go to for example, in airports. We don't write the name of people when we pick up people at the airport. We use a different sign. Not even our companies or their companies. We use a different sign that we send them to them, and they have to recognize the sign, because you don't want anyone asking for Mr. Rowe, and Mr. Rowe goes to a taxi that is not the security that was hired. That and you have to think about things like that all the time. Sometimes in Mexico, I have to say so, I use my watch in the right hand instead of in the left. Like for when I drive, if somebody wants to steal my watch, they don't see it, so I'm not a target. So we always have to make sure how we help the client become a hard target. That's the important thing. Even if we have to follow protocol, we need to find a way to do it.
And I guess then the flip side of that is, are there any areas in Mexico, and it's a bit of a straw poll question, obviously, but are there any areas in Mexico that are truly like the worst fears of a Hollywood movie, or not? Yes,
there are truly areas like that, but the reality is that executives don't go there. There's no industry there. There is no industry. Other than probably agricultural, sometimes the ones that need that extra experience places like that are like veterinarians that need to go to those remote areas to check on the 5,200 chickens in one farm or cows, because they really need to go there to sell whatever they sell, food or medicine or different things for that sector. But regularly, you don't visit those areas because there's no industry. So you don't find shootings, and you don't have guys, going around shooting. And there's one reason for that. I mean, guns in Mexico are forbidden. So whatever gun you find in the market, you need to have a permit, otherwise it's illegal. And there's a lot of illegal, smuggling of arms between Mexico and the U.S. and those are the guns that use the drug dealers or the cartels. But as I said, executives go to urban areas, and we know the agenda very well. The trip has been planned for 2 or 3 weeks. You do the advanced work 2 or 3 weeks before, and then a week before, and then you work on that constantly. So there's not a lot of room for misinterpretations or improvisation. There's not a lot of room for that, because we have to plan that long ago. I mean, very well ahead. So that's the important area. And as I said, you go to the main industry, and even in those manufacturing or industrial areas, those are like hubs. You have 25, 50, 100 companies in one single place working. So security is tough there, and they know how to handle it. So I would say, yes, there are areas, but those areas, as I said, which are very, very dangerous, probably are along the border, and some others near whatever drug plantation there is from a drug dealer. But that's far from the realities of a big city. So I would say you may feel uncomfortable, but nothing is going to happen to you. And if we have to travel to those areas, then we know what to do. We know exactly with whom we have to talk and how to make it work legally.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And as you say, an international operator, very unlikely that they're going to go with some vets to see a very remote farm. It's much more likely that you'll be in an urban area, which I think is key. One thing that I think is interesting to explore, mainly because you're here and it's so close to the very excellent panel that you and fellow colleagues from Mexico had at the IPSB. I wonder if you could give a sense of, how that panel came about, what the message was, what the sort of takeaways were, who was on the panel, because I think that was a very nice step change for the IPSB. Kudos, Chris Story and the team, of course, for that. But since you're here, I thought I'd ask you.
Yeah. Well, basically, it all started with an idea that I had. I worked for the Mexican Bank for Import-Export Bank in Madrid for a couple of years, many years ago, before I joined the security industry. And we had to create these pavilions, the Mexico pavilion, where you have in different trade shows. And I talked to Pablo Ortiz Monasterio, was also part of he was one of the conferences, he spoke about driving or vehicle security, something like that in the IPSB. But I talked to him because I knew he was connected with the IPSB, with Chris Story and Chuck Tobin and other people in the board of the IPSB. And I told him that we should create a Latin American or a Mexican pavilion in the next IPSB, which was the one back in December. So we convinced WSO, GALEAM, GRIP, and obviously FirstCall and AS3 was part of it. And those are the companies that wanted to follow with this idea. In the panel we had how do you call it, the guy managing the
moderator,
the conference was Gonzalo Senosain from GRIP. He has like private security, like gates and guards and executive protection. You have Ivan Ivanovic, and you had also this guy Gerardo del Lago from Galean. And we wanted to talk about our experiences in Latin America as well, because somehow, for some reason, we are all based here in Mexico, but we all have experience working in Latin America in different countries, doing vulnerabilities assessments or executive protection or risk assessments, risk analysis, and also because we have we provide not only executive protection but emergency response. And sometimes you have people in other countries calling our GSOC, or we have people from other countries visiting Mexico calling the GSOC for support. And then that helps the audience understand that there are companies in Mexico with good enough, or in Latin America, with good enough experience and background to help you have a good partner in Mexico. And I'm going to say this: I mean, security is a business. Let's not be naive. Security is a business when we all want to make money. And I've seen people, the IPSB or other conference, and ASIS or GSX now, saying, well, I just had to let this job go because I didn't have resources in this country or in the other country, or we don't go international, we don't do this. You don't have to go yourself international. There are a lot of independent contractors. There are a lot of companies in different places that can give you the types of service you are waiting or you're looking for. So don't let that money go away. Call, make a few phone calls, use your network. And that's why we wanted to present this panel, to let you know that we are there and we are good enough to do it. We already work with Fortune 500, or whatever index you wanna mention. We work with those companies. So if we are good enough for those companies, we are good enough to work for you. And also, if you have your own SOPs, your standard procedures, we read them, we understand them, and we follow them. We're not going to steal the client. We can sign, a non-compete, an NDA, mutual NDA, whatever you want. We can sign it. I mean, we just want the industry to grow, and we realize that cooperation is important. Keeping the information for you, that doesn't help a lot of people. That doesn't help a lot of people travel or solve a problem. We need to be in this mindset of sharing. And even though you're a competitor, sometimes you're a competitor, sometimes it's your independent, sometimes it's your contractor, sometimes you are the contractor. and you have to live up to their standards, and that's what we wanted to show. And we wanted to also them to understand. You talked about expectations. Sometimes sometimes things are not gonna go the way you like it, because it's a different country. You have to adapt. You have to, and I'm not talking about resilience. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with adapting to a different country. I know you trust the way you do it. You've done it in the past, but if you've never been there in that area, or even if you've been there in that area, we need to listen to the people who live there, because things change from one day to the other. Different things happen. Mexico City is not the same as 20 years ago. Monterrey has grown a lot. Guadalajara has a lot of energy at the moment. So there are different places where people are traveling, and you've never been there. So have a local talk to you. If you still want to, do things your way, we understand it. And as I said, we will help you as much as we can. But there are sometimes situations where we have to say no. We are not going in that way. Like we had a service in the favelas in Brazil, in Rio, for a pharmaceutical company, and we had to talk to the leader of the favelas. We had to talk to them, because you want to protect in every single way that person. So you have to operate. It's not the advanced work that you say, well, there is this house this way, and there are loopholes in this road or things like that. No, it's not like that. You have to talk to people. You have to talk to the leaders of those communities and say, we're coming in. We're not a threat. We just want to do this. We just want to do that. And that's the kind of things sometimes people don't understand. Once they understand it, everything flows. And then we do things your way. But there's sometimes you have to trust. It's not a leap of faith, but sometimes you have to trust the local partner. And why we've been in the market for so long. We've been in the market in Mexico for 18 years now. And there's a reason why. We have a lot of local people and a lot of resources and networks. And I'm sure other companies do the same thing. I mean, I'm not giving you the formula of the Coca-Cola, but I think it's just common sense. You just have to be open.
Yeah, absolutely. Be open and use the resources that you're presented with, because a lot of people talk about Miami as a gateway to Latin America, and yes and no, in a variety of different jurisdictional ways. There's a lot of tech, right? But I wonder then, is Mexico actually the physical security equivalent of a gateway to South America, Latin America?
I don't see it that way. Because I see a very strong industry in Colombia. I see a very strong, very, very strong security industry in Brazil. Argentina is also pushing a lot. They just have to. It's just the way we are differently and organized, and the size of our economies tell you exactly where things are better or worse. I can tell you that Costa Rica is very expensive. It's not cheap to operate there. Brazil is also very expensive. We wanted to provide emergency response and GPS monitoring, and we faced different laws that did not allow us to operate there because of the data management, and sometimes when you monitor people, well, you need data. But in any case, I don't see Mexico like that. In the way I see Mexico leading the region is in the way we have been organized. We are organizing ourselves with this ASIS and IFPO and the Mexican Association of Private Security, as well as the Mexican Council of Private Security. We're following Spain somehow. Spain is very advanced in this. They have a lot of experience, and then we follow them. We see what they do. We try to do it here, and then we try to contact all our colleagues in Latin America, and they see the way we operate, because they come here, and we have a lot of seminars and different conferences, online or in situ, where we discuss things like this. But I think every country has their own laws and capacities, and I don't see Mexico leading. or being the gateway in terms of security, because you have a lot of Colombians who are very good at security, Venezuelans as well, and I think that has to do with where we operate. We face the threats every day. We don't just see them at movies. We live with them every day, and we read them in the newspapers, and we are that, and I think that's why I'm saying Mexico may not be the gateway, because Venezuelans and Colombians experience very high security problems before Mexico.
And on reflection, my question, I think, was probably trying to get a nice soundbite, because wouldn't it be good if you said, yes, Mexico, gateway, and I think that's perhaps one of the challenges when people are uninitiated and they don't take the time to investigate and ask someone like yourself. They might make assumptions. So maybe I'm alone, but if you also had assumptions, I think this is a very useful exercise in sort of reality check and having a deep dive. So what's next for you? Are you going to be traveling around? Where can people meet you? What have you got coming up that people should be aware of?
Well, I'm planning to. I'm going to be at the ONTIC. I'm planning to go to the ONTIC, conference, the Protective Intelligence Conference. I was there last year. I found it extraordinary. I'll try to go to ATAP, and in March, I'll probably be at the IFPO meeting, the Hispano-American board of IFPO, and probably GSX this year as well. I'll be traveling to the headquarters in San Francisco for my company, and from there I'll visit some clients. But they can find me in LinkedIn if they want. My LinkedIn profile is there, Hector Robles, and or FirstCall. They can just FirstCall CSS. They can contact me there. I'll be happy to interact with anyone. I'm a fairly open person. As I said, in this industry, everybody knows someone, and we all know something that helps another one.
I like that, and of course, we'll put those links in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure.
Wherever you listen to it, if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Cloud, Amazon, there's so many ways that it gets threaded out there now to the community. So we'll add everything into the show notes. But I really appreciate this. We're going to see your friend Ivan here in London in just a couple of weeks at the 8th Annual Executive Security and Close Protection Technology Forum in London.
You are going to enjoy that. Ivan is a great professional, and he's one of my best friends in the industry. I can tell you that. I really like that guy, his approach, and he's open enough to understand when we disagree on some things, and we laugh so much. He's a very fun guy with a very Serbian mentality adapted to a Latin American world. It's a great combination. Ivan is going to be a great person, and he wrote a great book, and we need a lot of people like Ivan, to share knowledge in this industry. We need a lot more knowledge in this.
Well, absolutely. I'm gonna bring that book up with him when I see him in a couple of weeks on the 26th of January in London. But this is fantastic. Thanks ever so much for your time. I'm really pleased that we got the chance to meet in Vegas, and I look forward to more circuit collaborations with you and your team.
For sure.
So thank you, Hector Robles. This has been another fantastic edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Hector. What a great friend of the industry, and obviously wonderful to bring him onto the podcast. And I know that he is indeed an avid listener of the session. Elijah, are you off to Mexico now? What have you taken away from today's session?
Well, again, I'm always a proponent for a healthy dose of reality. So you take out some of the misconceptions, you take out some of the stereotypes, you take out some of the fantasy, And while, all of that sounds good, particularly when you're trying to beef up your resume, when you're trying to impress a client, or, talk about all of the, the hazardous countries you've been to, you have to approach every place on a case-by-case basis, and you measure the risk in accordance to where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing. If you're not in some of these really dangerous places, which for most of us, we're not going to take our clients to those places, those really aren't our specific concerns.
That's right. And low profile should win the day. I remember, when we had some presentations about operations in Afghanistan, people would say, unmarked soft top vehicle much more useful than a very, very heavily armored vehicle at times. So I guess the same principle happens there. But there will always be a customer who will not budge.
Absolutely.
Do you think that would happen a lot, that customers would absolutely go against local advice?
Well, I think that just as we introduce our specific color or flavor of an environment, the clients have a preconceived notion as well. So it's up to us to make the case in an informed way. And a lot of times we're battling historical challenges, historical perceptions, etc. But that's what makes the case for having a local representative, one who's fully embedded, one who's knowledgeable, that can provide you with the intel you need in order to convince the client or sway the client to whatever the tools that are necessary to effectively do the job.
Absolutely. And then I suppose, as Hector said, if the person that pays the bills absolutely wants something.
Yeah, for sure. If they want it, they can get it. But, I think it's our job to paint that picture, because what we don't want to do is make ourselves a much more visible target because of how we're conducting the protective operations.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you, and he mentioned the beast because of the recent Joe Biden visit.
Sure.
Then you mitigate the mitigation.
Yeah, well, some people you're not going to say no to. Some operations are going to have to be ran a certain way. But I think, again, even with a situation when, like, the president of the United States, coming into a country, he's still going to liaison with counterparts there. They're still going to take the advice or listen to the advice and procedures of the local security professionals. And then inside that blender there is going to be how the operation is kind of set up and the strategy is laid out.
Absolutely. And that strategy and forethought is what we end up having at many of these conferences at IPSB and the others. How do you get left of bang? Left
For
of
sure. Well, speaking of conferences, don't you got something coming up?
Oh, what a good segue.
You like that, right?
So, on the 26th of January is the 8th annual CP Tech Forum, which has grown from a, very much operator-led tech forum to talk about, where tech could help and hinder your daily work. It's really grown into physical security modernization. I brought corporate security leaders who could potentially employ EP operators. I brought international operators who could potentially partner with each other. And then I've got interesting technology perspectives, whether it's virtual reality training for kidnap and ransom. I know it's not a inherently new topic, but I think it should be looked at, all the way through to Colin Singer, who's going to talk about an RST, residential Malinois pet, which is a deterrent.
For sure.
But at the same time, is a pet. So it's really evolved. I know I've run the gambit of topics there, but very much looking forward to it.
Well, just the fact that we're on number 8 means that you're doing something right. So I salute you.
Yeah, and of course, with the BBA and NABA and Circuit Magazine support, it is absolutely because of you, the listener, to make it such a good success. Looking forward to it, and how some people say, "Oh, I'm selling out" as a bit of a sales tactic. Each year, I'm not joking, it becomes a capacity problem. So, each year we do have a cutoff time.
And that's a great problem. But I do understand what you mean when you kind of say seats are limited. People use that term so much that it's kind of like, oh, white noise. But I've got an upcoming training course, and we're trying to put a cap on it because there's only a certain amount of time, and you want to make sure that you're giving the students the right amount of attention. So as a business owner, of course, I want as many people as possible to come, but at the same time, I want to make sure that the quality doesn't drop at all. I mean, it's the same reason why at a nice restaurant, they might have a wait. Of course, they could sit you, but you're just going to be sitting there and your food's not going to come out, and then you're going to be grumpy about that. So, it's there's a give and take to that. So what I should say is bravo, sir. So maybe for number 9 or number 10, you're going to have to move to a bigger venue, but that's a great problem to have.
Well, thank you. And a segue, you mentioned you've got your course. When is your course?
Yeah, my course, I'm doing the Icon Celebrity and VIP Protection course at the end of March. And then that's going to go right into the advanced course. So we're doing 10 days of training total, 5 and 5. And that's March 20th. And then I think we wrap up on the 29th there, if I got my math right.
And where will it be?
And that'll be in Raleigh, North Carolina. So this is our second time having it there. The last course was phenomenal. We had some great instructors from all over the industry come. We had an international flavor of students from the United Kingdom to Africa to Canada. So it was great having those in there. And so we're looking to have to kind of duplicate that success this year. It's tough for me to have courses as often as I like because of my operational schedule. So I really look forward to it as well.
And I know the feedback has been amazing, and I've also really enjoyed the content that's come out of it, because I know people have done a lot around it as well.
Very cool.
But yeah, so please reach out if you want to come to the London event. Reach out if you want to come to the Icon training course, and we are still, of course, as always, looking forward to contributors to the podcast and the magazine. As ever.
Absolutely. And we just dropped a new issue. We should mention.
We did.
Yeah. A couple of days ago, just dropped a new issue.
Please subscribe to the magazine. If you like the podcast, take out a subscription to the magazine because it gives a lot more in-depth articles, consideration, and it's got a very nice virtual online format that we can easily read. So look at the podcast as a bit of a gateway to the magazine itself. But good. Well, thank you for joining us on this wonderful journey to Mexico. Thank you, Hector, for enlightening us. Looking forward to seeing you all very, very soon. And as always, I mean, not always, but it just happens to be another fantastic edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast.
Agreed.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.